If you are willing to do the work, it will pay off in huge ways.
I just really want women to know, like, it's not normal to feel like shit. Like, it's not normal to have painful periods or irregular periods or acne or bloating all the time.
I spent a lot of years punishing my body, and your body does so much for you. I just think you really should love it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of She's in Sync. Today, I am joined by another client of mine, Lisa, who is just finishing up our initial 5 months together. And I'm really excited to have her on here because, first and foremost, she's been such a dream client to work with. And she also has just been really open and honest about her journey with mental health and her realizations in working together of how much birth control impacted her, not only physically, but mentally as well. So, I've done a couple of podcast episodes about how birth control specifically impacts your mental health and can cause increased risk for anxiety, depression, PMS, etc. But I haven't had a real life client story chatting through that. So Lisa has graciously agreed to come on and just chat about her experience working together and what she's learned along the way, specifically related to mental health, but we'll also tie in some physical stuff in there too. So, Lisa, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and just start off by how we connected. So I know originally we connected on Instagram because I had posted some sort of like poll. I don't even remember what it was, but it was a poll and you had responded to it. And so I just reached out to you and I was like, hey, like, just wanted to check in, like, is this something you're experiencing? Like, what's going on? Do you need any like resources for this? And immediately you were like so open and just like, I didn't even know I could stop birth control and not have painful periods, or I didn't even know that it was like that birth control could be related to some of my anxieties I was experiencing. So I sent you my birth control like break up with birth control masterclass, and you like immediately watched that, and you're like, I'm interested in scheduling a call. Like, let's get on the phone. And I was like, oh, great. Like she's ready to go. And so sure enough, we connected on a free strategy call, and you were like, yeah, like I'm ready. I want to get off the pill. I want to heal my body. I'm really down with this root cause approach. So that's kind of how we started working together. Do you have anything you'd want to add to that initial like reach out and initial connection?
Well, it actually goes back a little bit further than that because you had been on Katie's podcast late last year. And so Katie's a trainer at the gym that I go to. She's also a registered dietitian and she has her own podcast. And so I follow her on Instagram and she had posted, and there was a reel just of little snippets of your conversation that you had together. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. So then I started following you. And then I don't remember what the poll was that you did either. I tried to go back and look. And it was just like all the stuff that you were saying. And then the master class, it was like, you know, mind blown, all this information. And everything that you said made sense. And then it just felt like, I liked that you were, so responsive immediately because, some people it's like you respond and then they'll ask you something and then time goes by and you sort of forget about it and it feels a little bit um, flaky, I guess. So it just felt good that you were like, it seemed like you were committed and into it from the beginning before we had even committed to working together.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That's a good call out because so Katie, as Lisa said, like Katie's a dietitian. We're actually from the same hometown and we went to school together for dietetics. We went to Purdue. And she and I are just colleagues now as well as friends. And so we've been guests on each other's podcasts. She did a podcast episode of mine about healthy hormone workouts and stuff like that. So that's a really good one if you haven't checked that out. But yeah, you connected with me from her, and then what I said about the hormone stuff really resonated. So you signed up for VIP one-on-one coaching, and your ultimate goal was to safely transition off of birth control. And we actually just met yesterday, and we gave you the go ahead to like officially stop. So was yesterday your first day not taking it?
Yep.
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 Okay, cool. So we had a little bit of a celebration party yesterday with like, we're officially ready. So you did all the prep work ahead of time, which we'll dive into what that looked like. But give us a little bit of background of, why you started birth control and just anything related to your journey up until we started working together.
Yeah, so I started taking the daily oral hormonal birth control pill in my late teens just because purely for the fact that I wanted to prevent pregnancy. I know like some of your other clients that you've worked with or talk about, they were missing periods or had painful periods, acne, things like that. And I remember, in school, people that I was friends with, they would talk about, oh, I can never come like to school the first couple of days of my period because it's so painful. And I just thought, wow, that's so strange. I don't have that problem. And so I just, took the birth control throughout like the rest of my late teens into my early 20s, throughout my 20s, 30s. I'm in my early 40s now. There was a couple of times that I stopped taking birth control. There was a time that I went on the Depo shot. And that just felt weird because it was like your period after so long on the shot, it just stops. And that felt unnatural to me. So I came off the shot and eventually went back on the pill again. And then there was times like where I wasn't in a relationship and I didn't feel like, I wasn't having a need to prevent pregnancy because there wasn't anything to cause pregnancy happening. So, I stopped taking the birth control and I just sort of felt like maybe it wasn't something I should take long term like that, but I didn't really have any concrete evidence and I hadn't done any, research on my own. And then so I'd say probably for the last 10 years at least, I've been taking birth control continuously.
Yeah.
So,
And you hit on a couple of points because I remember you saying when we first connected of like I didn't realize there was a way to prevent pregnancy without hormonal birth control, which is, that's just kind of what we're taught of like take birth control. It's like your only way to prevent pregnancy, which yes, that's a great option. And my whole thing is informing women of like, okay, and it can have these negative side effects from it, which we should all be informed of. And also knowing that there are other non hormonal options and really empowering women to know how to track their cycle and, understand it versus just fearing it. So that's a tangent for another day, but we talked about that. And then also it kind of confirmed, like what you said, you were experiencing some issues and you were like, could birth control be because of this? And I think that the master class and us talking kind of connected those dots and even further in working together in our lab work. So what were some of the biggest things that you were dealing with in terms of like symptoms?
um, I think what I originally reached out to you for was just mood swings. I would have, every couple of cycles, I would have these really intense mood swings, where almost just felt like the biggest roller coaster at Kings Island. Like you would just slowly tick your way up to the top, and then once your period started, you just come down and you felt like a normal person again. And like I was aware of it, like I could feel myself each day, like emotionally, mentally getting worse and worse and worse. But it was like, I know when my period comes, it'll get better. But then it was, people would get like my nerves would be really short, everything would just get, bother me really quickly. And I didn't like being like that. I didn't like being that person. I wanted to be somebody that was more calm and go with the flow and easygoing and not just the littlest thing would, you know, cause a major reaction. But I think looking back, like I was having trouble sleeping, and I didn't really realize that either until kind of you pointed it out. Because you're like, I think you're having trouble sleeping. You put it like in our notes, and I'm like, I am. But I was taking, but I was taking, a 12 milligram melatonin every night, which I think is like almost the highest you can get. And then a lot of times I would get back out of bed because I couldn't shut my mind off, and I would take like another half of melatonin to fall asleep. And then sometimes I would wake up in the middle of the night and my mind would just keep running and running. And, I just lay there and think about all these things, like just down a rabbit hole about just stuff that wasn't really, that I don't really worry about now. It was causing, like the mood swings would cause issues with my boyfriend and I. And I just had like extreme emotional sensitivity. And I just kind of thought that that's who I was, that I was very emotional. And, sometimes he would come over, he was still decompressing from a long work week. He would be not as talkative or not, just not how he normally is. And I would think I've done, it's me, like he's mad at me, something's wrong. And then I would shut down and then he's like, what's wrong? And then it would just like, we just clash. And now I don't have that problem. It's like now I can say like something seems off with you. Like, what's going on? And I know it's not me, or if it is me, it's like, well, we can talk about it. It's not something that I mean, like completely would shut down, or sometimes would bring me to tears.
Yeah, just being able to think more clearly. And I think what you said too about like this is just how I am. I think that's
Hmm.
like unfortunately that's how like women are portrayed, is like we're overly sensitive, we're overly emotional, but like no one connects the dots of like maybe this is from taking birth control for so long, and it literally changes your brain and puts stress on your brain, which we saw through the lab work was 100% the case with you, of like you had copper toxicity and you had high estrogen levels that your body was having trouble detoxing. You had a really weak microbiome in your gut, which there's a huge connection between the gut and the brain. So it wasn't a you issue. It was like I mean, it was happening in your body, but it wasn't just like a personality thing. It was like, okay, like this is my body literally under stress, which is impacting how I present in my relationships, at work, in my everyday life.
Yeah, yeah. And I think because like slowly over time it just gets worse and worse, but it just becomes your normal. You don't really, you're living it every day. You don't really realize how bad it is, how much it's progressed. And I remember talking, like I saw a therapist a few years ago and I talked to her about mood swings, and she said, talk to your medical provider. She said they may be able to switch you to a different birth control, or they could prescribe you like an SSRI. And I thought, I thought, okay. So I went and talked to my doctor, but then I just kept thinking, I thought, I don't think like I need, like an antidepressant or something like that. Not saying there's anything wrong with taking that if it's needed, but I just felt like that doesn't seem like that doesn't seem like what the problem is. So I talked to my doctor. At the time, I was taking a birth control pill that was just like the mono hormonal throughout the month, and so she switched me to a triphasal one. And so like each week it has a different dose of hormones. And within a couple months, I did notice the mood swings were better, but still something just felt off. And then, like you said, when I listened to your masterclass, you did a podcast episode with, I think her name is Vicky, like the fertility awareness method. And I was like, wow, this is so cool that you can, track your body like this with these different ways and prevent pregnancy in a natural way that's as effective or more effective than birth control, right? Like, birth control that you take.
Yeah. So I mean, one of your strengths definitely, and we've talked about this, is like you're very in tune with your body. Like, and I love it because you always send me, you're like, I journaled this week and like these are the wins I noticed, or like these are the changes that I noticed. So it's cool that you like chronicle that, because you can see slowly but surely over time, things have shifted in just a couple of months, which is pretty cool. So you mentioned some of the things that you'd already tried and you were pretty game, just you were like ready. I think that was the biggest thing that I I thought was so cool, is you were just like, I'm ready to do this. Like I'm done with just the band-aids. I'm done with being pumped full of artificial hormones. Like I still feel off. I I feel like it's the birth control. And so that's, I think, a big reason, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that you decided to, invest in VIP coaching.
Yeah, I mean, just a lot of things that you were saying were making sense. And I don't know, maybe it's like a red flag, green flag, beige flag, but me, once I decide something, I go all in. It's like a train down the tracks. Like there's no stopping me once I decide I'm ready for something.
Yeah.
And I think like after, talking to you, in the DMs, and then, listening to your master class, I just thought this just makes sense. And we met, for like the pre-call, and I thought, I just want to do this. I feel, because you see things on Instagram and you're like, this person, they're like, oh, try this. It works. It, cures this. And then so I think, oh, you would try that. And then I just felt like, for a couple days I would feel a little bit better, but then I just would keep going back. And I thought something is just not right. And I thought, maybe this would make me feel better.
Let's talk about some potential, like, did you have any fears going into it?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, normal. Let's let's talk about those.
Yeah. I mean, in my because I journal every night, I do, and I got this from Sahil Bloom. He does like a win, a point of tension, and then a gratitude each day. So I do that every night. Sometimes it's very short, sometimes it's a longer journal, but it's kind of cool because you can go back and see, each day over the month, just how you're feeling. And leading up to before we started talking, I was like mixed emotions, like excited, but then also was like, after we signed to start working together, I'm like, did I make a mistake? This is a lot of money. And I just thought, I've heard always in the past that investing in your health is is not going to be a bad thing, with like physical movement. And then I just thought, I think this is going to pay off. And I thought, and I think also that the fact that you knew Katie and that I knew Katie on a personal level, it just felt like you weren't some random person on Instagram that was going to, not do me right.
Yeah, there is that like connection and that
Yeah.
trust factor for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, that's really important because you're right. Like this is an investment. This is, not something that I want people to blindly go into, and that's why I'm very transparent of like, this, yeah, it's an investment in your health. And just think about what if you don't do this, like, and think about how much you've spent already in terms of not just money, but like time and energy researching and trying things and, blindly supplementing and all that kind of stuff. So you had the right mindset of like, okay, like this is going to get me answers, and also trusting in that too.
Yeah.
Um, and one of the things we talked about is like with the financial investment is like, we chatted about like a custom payment plan option, because that's also something that's like really important to me. Is I never want finances to be a barrier for someone to get the support they need. So, that was something that we did kind of work out, not kind of, we did work out. And I wanted you to feel comfortable like doing this at a pace that felt good for you from a financial lens too.
Yeah, I really appreciated that. Because like, you give like kind of generic pricing options, like where it could start from. And then I remember when we talked and you told me the amount, I thought, how can I make that work? And then, you were really great at just making it work. And, then we had a couple of hiccups like in the beginning, and I thought she's not going to want to work with me because I'm being, it was still that anxiety. I was like, she's not going to want to work with me because I'm being a pain and this is extra work for her. And then, you did that podcast episode and you were feeling like you had done something wrong. So it was just funny that we were both feeling, the
Yeah.
same way, but we both wanted it to work. So yeah, I did appreciate the fact that you were willing to be flexible. And I know we signed an agreement, but it was like you're putting trust in me too, to, to trust me that I'm going to pay you.
Yeah. Yeah, and for context, yeah, we had some hiccups with and like I learned a lot of things about what HSA does and doesn't cover with payment plans and stuff like that. So we just had some hiccups in the first beginning, and I felt like I was like, oh shoot, like I'm making this so hard for her. Like she's gonna back out. Like she's gonna feel like this is too much work. And like on the flip side, you were feeling that you were like, oh, I'm making it too hard for her. So it was funny. We were like, oh no, like this is a good example of like mind reading. Usually we aren't reading people's minds correctly, and people are usually making it a bigger deal than it actually is. We both were doing
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I just kept thinking she's going to come back and be like, "You're too much of a pain. We're not working together, or I'm not going to do this." And then I thought, and then I would think that was something else. I thought, well, if she comes back and she's like, "We can't make it work," then I just thought it's just not right. And then I just kind of felt like, the universe spoke and was like, "This is right to do." So,
Yeah, exactly. So let's dive into like the meat and potatoes of what we uncovered. So I prefaced this before, but we first started with a deep dive assessment. Before we run any labs in VIP coaching, I always do an assessment because like labs are great. Those are the sexy pieces of the puzzle. And we want to also look at, okay, why might those labs be off to really connect the dots? So, you had a really good foundation. Like you had worked with a dietitian before, you'd worked with Katie, and you have one of the things too is you had recovered from disordered eating, and you were in a space where you really improved your relationship with food, and we continued to expound on that. I think that was, one of the cool cherry on top of the sundae pieces of working together is like showing you specific nutrients. I'm getting ahead of myself here, but like showing you specific nutrients you like needed more. And so you had a really good mindset around that that wasn't restrictive, but like how can I add these foods in to nourish myself and to like balance my hormones and my mood better? Um, but before we got into that, you had a solid foundation with eating, but there were still things that we worked on. So I gave you mineral mocktails. That was something right away. You started incorporating some mineral mocktails to help just with nutrient replenishment. Cause I could tell, I mean, that's something every woman, every person in general, I know everyone in general needs more of that. And then some specific stress management stuff, because before we got labs back, which I suspected there were some imbalances, which there were, I gave you, some tools to work on just to add to your tool belt for regulating your nervous system, which you really like, you benefited from that right away. I think you found those really helpful.
Yeah. Um, I started working through those, still working through it. But there was, like I remember one instance at work where they talked about, in the vital side, they talk about kind of like shaking it off like a dog does. So like, like when a dog stands up or whatever, they just shake. And, then they said, if it still is bothering you, take a walk, a few minute walk. And there was something that had happened at work that kind of upset me, just like on an emotional level, because I was just kind of feeling empathetic towards an employee that I was working with. Um, and so I was, in a conference room by myself. We'd gotten off the phone and I just did this like shake like a dog thing. And I was like, wow, this feels really stupid, but also I feel a little bit better. And then I still felt like I feel like I still need to shake this off a little bit. So I just went like outside, did a quick like 5-10 minute walk, came back, and I just felt so much better. And it just was like mind blowing that something so simple as that would help reset you instead of just carrying the weight of that emotionally the rest of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. I know for me, it's like deep breathing because whenever I get stressed, I instantly like do shallow breathing and I have to like prompt myself to take deep breaths. And then I'll go back to like shallow breathing and I have to prompt myself back. Like, so finding what works for you, and the program that VIPs get access to is Vital Side, which is a nervous system reset where it's specifically designed to give you those tools to try out and see what works best for you because not everyone's the same with it. So it has a variety of things. But yeah, I agree. Like just those simple things that seem kind of silly and like even for me with breathing, I'm uh, like that seems dumb, but I'm like, it really does work so much. Like, and it's free. Like, you can do it wherever you are. So,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we do like in yoga, we do the same breathing that they would have. Not all of the same breathing the techniques that they would have you do, but like I do that in bed a lot. Like if I'm trying to, if my mind is a little bit more busy that night, I try to like just take a real deep breath and then just like let it out slowly because when I'm in yoga, that totally helps me relax. And I think, why can't I relax like this in my bed like I can in the yoga studio? But
I do the same thing. Sometimes if I'm like my mind's going and I'm like having trouble sleeping, like and Jared's like next to me, I'm like, okay, like let's do some deep breathing and like hopefully he just won't hear me like doing like deep breathing. If he does, whatever.
he's like, why are you breathing in really long and then holding your breath for 4 seconds and then
Yeah.
blowing?
I'm just I'm doing my thing
Yeah.
here. So when we got your labs back, I if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm gonna like show you what this looks like because I think this is really cool. Like the HTMA that we got was so interesting because you had something called a calcium shell, which I do want to preface and say in all transparency, you do have hard water. So that means your calcium is going to be a little bit higher. But the fact that it was so high and your magnesium was so high, those are two of your calming minerals. And your body, when calcium is this high, means that you are literally, it's called a calcium shell. Your body is literally building a protective outer layer to, you know, in response to long term stress. And your magnesium is really high because you're burning through that and it's trying to balance that high calcium out. And magnesium is the first mineral that someone's using up when they are stressed. So that was a really clear sign of like, okay, this makes sense. Like your body has this calcium shell. We need to break this down and, really a supplement with magnesium to help balance out your calming minerals. And the other thing we found through lab work too was your iron was high. And that was also evidenced in the HTMA that iron was above where we'd like to see it. So the fact that it was high in the blood and high in the tissue, aka the hair, showed me that we had something called that iron overload, which is when iron gets stuck in the tissues, it's not recycling well, there's an overload of iron and that causes inflammation. So one of the things we talked about even before you stop birth control was stopping those placebo pills because they have iron in them and also doing a blood donation. So that's one of those like funky holistic, something that your holistic diet functional dietitian tells you to do is like donate blood, but it's because we had an overload of iron and that was causing inflammation, which impacts your entire body, but also impacts, when you have inflammation in your body, it's inflammation in your brain. So you did an iron or a blood donation to help support that. And then we really worked on optimizing your iron recycling. And now that you're not on birth control anymore, too, you're not going to have that artificial iron in your body. So that should regulate itself too, and something that we'll just monitor. The other thing as well with this HTMA is we see that her uh, cobalt is really, really high. And in her stool test too, we just had some indicators when cobalt is high on the HTMA, especially in combination with a low phosphorus, which she also had, and a low potassium. This is a sign that we have low stomach acid. So when we have low stomach acid, that can inhibit our absorption of vitamins and minerals in the gut. And birth control already directly depletes vitamins and minerals that we need. So it depletes, zinc and B vitamins. Low stomach acid also inhibits the absorption of those things. So we want to make for sure that someone is absorbing the nutrition from the food and making sure they have enough stomach acid. So we started you on digestive bitters to help support that, and to also just help optimize digestion, estrogen clearance, all that kind of stuff. And then another big thing we found too was high copper. And that was something I remember when we were first chatting too, because you were asking about non-hormonal birth control options. And I think you asked about the copper IUD. And I was like, ooh, like based on what you're telling me, I would really recommend testing copper first, because I feel like everything you're telling me screams like high copper.
Yeah.
And sure enough, your copper came back in the blood almost double what I like to see it. And that is classic anxiety, intrusive thoughts, spiraling, PMS, all those symptoms you were dealing with. So the high copper plus the calcium shell, I was like, this makes sense. Were any of those things that I mean, I guess what was was there anything else in the labs that you were like, oh, like this really was so interesting or mind blowing?
I mean, all of it I think was really interesting. And then like a little bit of the mind games because I would want to know, like, I would ask you questions, and I think she's probably getting tired of me asking all these questions. I just thought it was so interesting how everything just sort of was tied together, like in a web of some sort. And how the food played into that, the birth control was causing all of these things. And something else that I kind of struggled with was, trying to eat a balanced diet, but still feeling like I was hungry. I mean, like I would feel full, but I would still feel like I don't feel satisfied. And it wasn't because I wasn't eating a variety of foods. It just like that was something else that felt off. And, I would try to play around with different things to fix that feeling. And then, I've noticed, especially since starting the digestive bitters, eating and like sometimes, like for example, I'll talk about breakfast. Like I usually do overnight oats for breakfast. There's times where I'm like, I don't want the rest of these oats right now, and I'll put them back in the refrigerator and come back to them like in an hour, hour and a half when I start to feel hungry again. Where before we started working together, like I would eat my oats and I would think like I still want something. Like I feel like I've needed carbs. I just felt like I needed more, even though my stomach felt full. So it just felt like I was, like you said, I wasn't getting the nutrients, like my body wasn't absorbing the nutrients. And I think you said too, the digestive bitters would help with heartburn, which I would experience heartburn a lot, like pretty frequently. So, but I didn't realize all that was tied in. I just thought it was related to something I was eating that was causing the heartburn.
Yeah, that's what we're told. It's like we'll avoid citrus foods or caffeine or, things like that. But and this is a good learning, like a good nugget for people is a lot of times when someone has heartburn, people like doctors recommend like PPIs to lower stomach acid. But a lot of times it's because they have low stomach acid. And that can be due to a variety of factors, including like H. pylori or, just low stomach acid from stress, low minerals, a variety of things. So that PPI actually is making things worse. I see most of my clients have low stomach acid as a piece of the puzzle in their health story. So yeah, just something for people to kind of think about, which seems counterintuitive.
Yeah, that's what I thought too, because I just thought if you're having heartburn all the time, I thought there must be a lot of acid.
Yeah.
But it was the opposite. So
Yep.
I just think it's all so interesting.
Yes. Yeah, I know it's fascinating. And so, like I said too, in terms of like gut stuff, we in your GI map, so that's a comprehensive stool test I do with clients, we also saw low levels of good bacteria. So your good bacteria was wiped out. And also you had your beta glucuronidase, which is it shows us your gut's ability to eliminate and detoxify estrogen. So low levels of good bacteria, and that therefore can cause high beta glucuronidase, which can cause retention of estrogen, which can cause estrogen dominant like symptoms, which you were experiencing. So mood swings, for people, other people, it can be acne, it can be painful periods, PMS, all those things. And so we worked on incorporating specific foods, so like prebiotics, probiotics, resistant starches, like your overnight oats. All of those things help rebuild good bacteria because that's a huge piece of the puzzle. And a lot of times I'm like very passionate about talking about this because people jump to fancy gut killing protocols a lot of the times. But if you don't test and you're just doing that, you might make it worse because you actually need to like rebuild your gut. You don't need to kill anything off. You need to rebuild your gut bacteria, which was certainly the case with you. And that in turn helps with rebalancing and building healthy, balanced hormones too.
Yeah, I remember you talking about that too, as far as different foods to eat and talking about like full fat dairy kind of helps with hormones and like fat in general, I think you said. And just the mineral mocktails, just adding foods in like yogurt, cheese, whole milk. There was a time in my life where if I would have said every day you're going to have whole milk in your coffee and you're going to use whole milk in your overnight oats, I'd been like, you're crazy. That would have been like the dieting version of me would have not thought that was right, but it's more satisfying. And it just kind of goes to show like the work that I've done over the years, like to heal my relationship with food is, and that was something else that I thought really early on. It was really cool to see how you can add foods in, like, the Brazil nuts. I'm trying to think what else. Cinnamon, I'd add cinnamon to my oats. I started adding pumpkin into my oats. So just kind of like celebrating fall in my overnight oats all year round now.
Yeah.
But just it was like really cool and like, carrots, like you were talking about how like raw carrots can help with like estrogen detox. And I was just like, I thought it was so interesting how you can eat different foods and not be like, well, I want to eat carrots because they're low calorie or, because for whatever diet culture reason, it's more, I want to eat carrots because it's going to help me detox this extra estrogen that I have. It was just really cool to see that shift.
Yeah. And that's why, with all my clients, I want to make for sure if there's any history of disordered eating, eating disorder, I want to make sure we're at a point where we are past the, okay, we just need to eat phase and we can do this deeper work because I very much agree with that. Like my philosophy is very anti-diet. What can we add versus taking things away? I'm very passionate about we need to nourish your body, hence the name of my business. And the question I ask everybody every single week or answer on this podcast is like, how are you nourishing yourself? That's very, very important to me versus other programs are more restrictive of like, take out gluten and dairy and, those things do more harm than they do good for most women and their hormones. So I'm glad that was like really, really helpful for you too. And again, the cherry on top of the sundae with your like journey in relationship with healing that with food.
Yeah. I remember too going to different, if you were like doing a work event and there was food provided. And I remember being excited because they had fruit that you had recommended and they had cheese and they had pickles, which you had recommended. I just remember thinking like, oh, there's like so much food here that's, been prescribed to me that I can eat. Whereas before, I think if you were kind of still in like that diet culture mind frame, you would have been like, oh, I can't eat cheese because, for whatever reason. But I was just like, oh, look at all these like foods that I can help or that I can eat that are provided to me that are going to help heal me.
Were there any barriers that came up throughout the process? We kind of talked about at the beginning, like just kind of some just fears, and were there any barriers that came up or challenges throughout the process? We talked about kind of the good. I want to touch on, was there anything that was challenging?
Um, I think the only part that was really challenging was at the very beginning, like once, all the supplements that you recommended when they arrived, and just kind of first changing my routine to incorporate those supplements. It's like, how does this work? It was like, before I wasn't really taking anything. Like, I take an allergy pill and birth control and occasionally something for a headache or for cramps. So I wasn't really taking anything like that. So then all of a sudden you're taking like, like fish oil tablets and, the whole like gauntlet of things I was taking. And I just thought, wow, this feels like a lot. It felt overwhelming. And I thought, how am I going to remember which is which? What's this for? Is this with food? Do I need to wait before I eat this? And so my personality, I love to make a list and I love to check things off. So I just went out and made myself an Excel sheet with everything that I was taking, how often I was supposed to take it. And then as I would go through the day, I would just check it off. So then, I could look, sometimes on the weekends, like because your schedule is a little bit different than during the week, I'd think, oh, it's like the end of the day and I forgot to take this. And I would know that because I checked it off. Now where we're at now, I still have the check off list, but I haven't used it really for the last couple of weeks because I just kind of know I kind of got myself into a good rhythm now where I don't really feel like I need to check and make sure I've done everything. But there are some times where like, I'll get home at the end of the night and I'm like, oh, I still need to do this or, take this or whatever. So, but that helped me. And maybe somebody else that works with you in the future, like that would help them too.
Yep. Yeah. And you were like a go-getter and you did that all yourself. And for some people, I'm like, let's do that in session or I'll give that to you of like, okay, here's my recommendations for how to like space these out. Because especially at the beginning, yeah, transparently, like you are on a lot of supplements right now because we had that high copper. So we took you through a high copper detox protocol. We prepped you for an iodine protocol because you were low in that. Iodine is really important for thyroid, for detoxification, which plays into that high estrogen piece, for skin health, for hormones. And then we had a lot of mineral replenishment to break down that calcium shell to balance out minerals that were depleted from years on birth control. So you were on quite a bit of stuff. So that's something too. I always tell people, I'm like, we want to do smart supplementation. And I also want to go at a pace that feels good for you. So we were constantly communicating. And I was like, okay, do you feel okay like adding something or switching this up? And you like let me know. You're like, okay, like I feel good now. Like I'm good to add this probiotic at this point throughout the journey. And, these are not things that you'll be on long term, all of them. But I always want to talk to clients about that too. So it feels doable and manageable and not like another thing that's adding overwhelm.
Yeah. And I think too, I mean, even though, like you said, I was taking a lot of supplements, and it did feel overwhelming. I mean, once I started taking the supplements, within a couple of days, like I noticed, and I would journal about it every night, like, oh, I feel better. Like my joints just felt looser, even though like I never really felt like I had joint pain. I felt like I had more energy, more mental clarity. I felt just like being more social, instead of just like, oh, I just couldn't wait to get home and be by myself. And so taking this, like it's kind of like you're taking all these things, but I was seeing something good from it. So it didn't feel like a chore or like a task or, like something I was dreading. It was like, I want to take all these things because it's making me feel better.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a huge thing of like when you're seeing results and you saw results really quickly. Like some people, it takes months to see that shift happen as their body is adjusting and regulating itself. But you were pretty quick with that, which was really cool. It's great when that happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
And kind of in turn too, like you mentioned some of the wins, like going back to originally what we talked about, what you were struggling with before, your mood improved. I initially gave you an herbal supplement to help with like sleeping and to help calm your mind at night. And you were able to like, you use that at first. And then you were able to, once we restored some of those imbalances or I guess like rebalanced things rather, you were able to stop that supplement and you're able to sleep better without melatonin or that needing to support you in doing so. Relationship with your boyfriend has gotten better. I know he's even made comments of like noticing you seem more even keel, more energy, less stress with like traveling and stuff too. Are there any other wins that you've experienced that you think are significant to mention?
Um, I mean, like in regards to the sleep, the melatonin, I mean, I don't even know how long I've been taking melatonin. So I thought that And I'm not sure that you're actually supposed to take melatonin on a long-term basis like that. I was doing some like, Google searching, and I thought, I think you're only supposed to take it short term instead of years, and then just gradually increasing your melatonin dosage like I was doing. So I thought it was nice, like for the first time in however many years, I can fall asleep without a sleep aid. And I still have the natural sleep aid that you gave me. It's in the closet. And sometimes I think, you know, I could take it as a crutch, if I'm having trouble sleeping, but also it's like I still can fall asleep even if there's something going on the next day. Like, if we're traveling, sometimes it's hard to sleep when you're going to travel the next day because you're thinking about, getting up early, making sure you pack everything, getting to the airport on time. And I've still been able to even sleep with even without the sleep aid. So I think for me, that's great. And then something else that I think is really a huge win for me is just this last period that I just finished. It was the most non-period period I've ever had, I think, in my life because, I didn't have any wild mood swings leading up to it. I felt really calm, relaxed. My mood was good. I wasn't having any wild cravings. I didn't feel extra hungry. I didn't feel moody, tired. I just didn't feel anything. I just felt normal and happy and relaxed. And my period came like the first 2 days. I took, like one ibuprofen in the morning. The rest of the time I felt fine. And then, because I didn't realize we were going to be stopping the birth control. So, I started the first pill of the new pack. And, I told Taylor that when I used to start that pill, I would think I'm going to feel good for the next 2 weeks because that was about the only time of the month I would feel good. And then once I got to that third week of the pill pack, I would notice my mood would start to, get worse. My energy would decrease and just all the symptoms would come up, flaring again. And so it was like I took this pill and I thought, I don't feel anything. I just feel neutral. I've been feeling good for the last couple weeks and I'm going to keep feeling good. So that was a big shift for me to just feel that calmness and just feeling good throughout my cycle for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, I loved that you said like it was the least period I've you can remember having. So that's really cool, and I'm excited to see how it progresses as we have officially stopped birth control just as of late. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's going to be really exciting. So, is there anything else before we wrap up that you want listeners to know or that you think is important or you want to mention?
I think like a lot of people may be concerned about the financial aspect, and I think it's important. I know money is a big issue for people, where you're going to spend it, and it is a big investment. But I think how quickly the time has gone since we started working together. And when we started working together, I thought, oh, this seems like a long time. But the time has gone by, yeah, it's gone by so fast. And I think in that short amount of time, how much I have improved, I just don't think you can put a price on that.
Results do take time, and so VIP coaching, it's a minimum commitment of 5 months. And that's, it does seem like a long time. You're like, that's almost half a year.
Yeah.
But I agree. I was like, oh my gosh, like we started talking about, you chose to, because you see the value in it and you felt better, you chose to continue working with me for a little bit longer. So we are going to continue working together for, a couple more months. And that is because you've recognized like, okay, this is like worth it. And I want to continue this progress. And also as you transition off birth control, we did the deeper work of prepping you to come off, like if anything comes up, because sometimes things do. Like I never promise like rainbows, unicorns, and sunshine because our body is all different. And, there might be bumps along the road, but having that one-on-one support, and doing some additional testing if needed or retesting is so helpful. I think just having someone be in your corner versus going down that Google rabbit hole is also really beneficial. And having, one of the things you said too is, you said to me multiple times is like knowing what I need for my body versus what Google says or ChatGPT says or this random influencer says.
Yeah. I mean, it felt like everything I was taking, it was specifically for me. And it was because it was. You had everything, all my lab work that we had done, the testing, and just the work that you've done to learn about all of this and be able to help women. I think something else that I would say is that it's, if you're feeling any of these symptoms that we've talked about, it's not normal. Like nobody should have to live like that.
Yeah, you might not realize how bad you feel until you start seeing, oh, that's not normal. Like that's just your reality.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when we first on my intake, I think you asked me, how stressed I was or how anxious I was. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, I was like, I think I'm a 5. And you're like, I think you're more like a 10, but
Yeah.
and then going back, I think I was like probably more than a 10.
Yeah. You're like a 20.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was like a 20.
Yeah, but you didn't realize that. And I can relate to that too, because like I didn't realize, how bad I felt. It was just like that's just how and it slowly builds because of the effects of birth control. If you've been on it 3 years versus 10 years, like that compounding effect builds. And that's why I just really want women to know like it's not normal to feel like shit. Like it's not normal to have painful periods or irregular periods or acne or bloating all the time. Like that's a sign that something deeper is going on that we need to uncover versus a band-aid like birth control or this medication or that's just part of being a woman. Like that grinds my gears so much. That's not normal. And that, speaks to unfortunately just how our medical community is taught is very like reactive versus proactive and very surface level quick fixes versus getting to the root of things.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, like out here, there was one day I was in the car on the way home and there was a radio DJ talking about, oh, we women, when it's this time of the month, we feel this way. And I was like, no, it's not normal that we shouldn't feel this way. Don't tell people that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you even sent me something about like an influencer and
Yeah.
she like a big part of her thing is how bad she feels around her period. And like so many women comment being like, yes, I can totally relate, totally relate. And it's like, it's just, it makes you and I sad because people just think that's how it is until
Yeah.
menopause, until you lose your period.
Yeah. I mean, I wish I could, I don't know, somehow, like I think about this a lot. Like, how could I just go around and tell everybody and convince them? But I think a lot of people are skeptic and they just maybe for whatever reason don't want to do the work. And I think if and like I think you've said too, that the protocols that I'm on that they are a lot of work, and to me it hasn't felt like that much work. I think just because I've said that I'm feeling so much better, but I think if you are willing to do the work, it will pay off in huge ways.
Yeah, totally. This is a two-way street of I will give you the tools to and the evidence and the data of what your body needs, but you as the client needs to implement it. And people like you who, and most of my, I mean, let's say most of my clients are the best. I work with the best women ever. And, people are if they're going to invest in this, like they're going to go all in. So they take that and they do see results because they're doing the deeper, harder work that I'm giving them to implement.
Yeah.
So, to finish off, I always ask listeners, or not listeners, I always ask my guests how they are nourishing themselves lately, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally. So, Lisa, how are you nourishing yourself?
I mean, just in the spirit of everything that we've been talking about, really just getting all in, going all in on this season of taking care of myself, finding foods that, I think it's really fun now. It's just like this fun little game. In your app, it has a food tracker, and I'll get something that I've been eating or having for lunch or dinner or whatever, and I'll put it in and like look at the minerals that are in there. I'm like, oh, this has potassium, and I didn't realize that this is a good source of potassium, which is something that you recommended that I try to get a lot of from food. So just finding foods and being curious about the nutrients that they provide, and just doing things to heal my body. I spent a lot of years doing like punishing my body, and your body does so much for you. I just think you really should love it.
So, just really looking at food of like, I mean, obviously, I feel like I say that too much, but I'm like, I literally do. Like, it's nourishing me. It's nourishment. It's not punishment. It's not something that should be restricted or that it should be feared. It's like, we literally need food to survive and not only survive, but like to thrive.
Yeah. Yeah. And resting, trying to just really embrace rest. Like you don't have to just go, 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 go. I mean, now I feel better. I have more energy. So it's like I want to go, go, go and do all these things. But also, leaning into, I don't feel like doing anything on a weekend day, so I'm just going to relax or just come home and relax or go to bed early, not try to stay up and doom scroll or anything like that. Like, my body's done all these things. Let me do all these things today. Like, let's rest and let it rejuvenate overnight.
Well, thank you again so much for sharing your story and being so open. And I know you're very passionate about spreading the gospel on women's health. And you're like, how can I make more of an impact? And you just coming on here and talking about this and being really real and raw, I think it'll resonate with so many people.
Yeah, great. I'm glad. I mean, like I said, I just wish every woman knew that they could do this, and have the will inside of them and like the desire to feel better. Because I know anybody that works with you and follows your direction is guaranteed to feel better.
Well, thank you. That's really sweet. Thank you. And if you like this episode, would really appreciate a like, a share. If you want more topics on specifically anything that we talked about, happy to do that. But until next time, stay nourished, friends.